Good morning, everyone. This is Katie Merrow, Vice President of Program at the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. Thanks so much for taking time out to join us today to talk about our 2013 Community Grant Program. I hope you're all safe and sound, whatever the weather is in your neck of the woods in New Hampshire. And I want to introduce the folks who are going to talk about the program today with us. We have about 200 people on the call together, so thanks very much, and we're going to get started. I want to introduce Ann Phillips, our Senior Program Officer who oversees the Community Grants Program. Ann will be running the webinar today and telling you about what's in store for 2013. Andrea Cotter, our online community knowledge specialist and webinar guru extraordinaire, is going to be helping us both run the webinar as well as talking with you about how to access your portal and some of the work where you'll be coming into the system. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ann. Thanks for being here. There will be opportunities for questions and all that, and Ann will go over that at the right time. So just sit tight, and here we go.
Great. Thank you very much, Katie. Good morning, everyone. I want to echo Katie's comments. We're delighted to have you with us today to learn a little bit more about our 2013 Community Grants Program. Before we get started, I just want to review some webinar housekeeping with you. You will all notice that you have a GoToMeeting dashboard on the right side of your screen. There is a red arrow that you can use to either bring the dashboard out or to reduce the dashboard so that you can see your slides better. Everyone on this call is muted. You will not be able to ask questions with your voice today. However, you are able to ask questions, and we welcome your questions. If you increase your GoToMeeting dashboard with the red arrow, you will see the questions box, and you click on the questions box, type your question there, and send it to us. We'll be able to see your questions as they come in, and we will answer those questions during the webinar to the extent possible given our time limitations. And you're also going to participate in a few polls over the course of this webinar, and those are opportunities for us to ask questions of you. You will respond to the questions, and then we'll be able to share with you the results of everybody's responses to the poll. Those will pop up in front of you. When the polls are launched. And so those are our housekeeping for today. I'd like to begin with just a quick review of our agenda for today. You see here in front of you the agenda for our webinar. We are going to do a review of our 2013 Community Grants Program, the guidelines, and the process for applying. As Katie mentioned, we have Andrea Cotter with us, who's going to share with you information about how to access our online application portal, which is the only way in which you can submit an application to the foundation. We do not accept mailed or emailed applications. And we are delighted to be joined today by Ellen Koenig, who is the Director of Education and Resources at the New Hampshire Center for Nonprofits. And Ellen is going to help us finish out our session today with a demo of the Center's online resource platform, NonprofitNext. So before we begin, as Katie mentioned, there's almost 200 of you on the call today, and let's get an idea of who is out there on today's webinar. So again, you're going to have poll questions that will pop up on your screen, and we'll ask you to vote, and as soon as we've got everybody voted, we'll share out with you the results. So Andrea, if you could launch the first question, please. So we'd love to know how many of you are ready for spring. Are you ready for spring? You're tired of the snow and ice? You're ready for mud season? Or you haven't had enough snow yet? Or you don't care because the weather changes all the time anyway? Let us know how you feel about that. All righty. So we're going to close the poll and share the results with you. And it looks like a majority of you are ready for spring. 52% of you are tired of the snow and ice. So that was our practice question. Now we're going to launch a few other questions so that we all have an idea of who's out on the poll. The first question is, at your nonprofit, what particular vision area do you work in? What area is your nonprofit's area of focus? And you'll see the options there: health and well-being, education, environment, arts and culture, and economy or civic engagement. So please vote according to the work that you do in your nonprofit. All righty. We look like we've got a lot of folks voted, so we're going to close the poll and share the results with you. About 41% of you work in the area of health and well-being, with almost equal percentages of you working in education and arts and culture, a small number of you in the environment, and 15% of you in economy and civic engagement. Great. So we've got another question. How many of you have ever received a foundation grant before? So we're going to launch that poll. You can answer yes, you have received a foundation grant, or you've applied but you were not awarded a grant, or no, you've never applied to the foundation before. And we're quickly approaching most of you having voted. So we're going to close the poll. And about 3/4 of you have received a grant from the foundation in the past. And about 25% of you have either applied and were not awarded a grant or have never applied. Great. I think that's it for our polls. So that gives all of us an idea of who is out there participating in the webinar today. So we're going to start with a review of the specifics of the 2013 Community Grants Program. And I'd just like to remind all of you that all the information that we're providing today is available on our website. We will provide you with links to that at the end, but it is simply our website, nhcf.org. Hopefully you've all had a chance to review some of this information and guidelines prior to the webinar. And over the course of this webinar, we're just going to highlight a few key areas for your attention. And for those of you that participated in last year's webinar or who submitted a grant application last year to the foundation, we're really, much of what you're going to see here, our guidelines and priorities and processes are the same as last year. Nothing has really changed. So you will have the opportunity to ask questions related to that, but I think that you're going to see much of what you're familiar with. So let's begin with eligibility. Who is eligible to apply to our Community Grants Program? And you see here on the slide the summary of eligible organizations to apply to the foundation. We make our grants only to qualified 501c3 organizations to support their charitable work. Now, if you are with a C4 or a C6 organization, under certain circumstances, we are able to make a grant to you and your organization for its work, but those circumstances are limited, and so we ask that you contact a member of the staff before you apply if you are with a C4 or C6 so that you can discuss that grant application with us. Now, if you don't have your own 501c3 designation from the IRS, there is the option of applying with a fiscal sponsor, and your fiscal sponsor will agree to accept and administer the grant on your behalf. We have a fiscal sponsor agreement that must be signed and submitted with your grant application, and you can preview that. We have a copy of that agreement available on our website so that you can see what that looks like and what the requirements of fiscal agency are. We do make grants to public agencies, including municipalities. But I want to say a little bit about this because when I was reviewing the people who had registered to participate in the webinar, I noticed that there were a number of you from SAUs, from school districts, and I just wanted to make sure that you understood that through our Community Grants Program, we do not generally fund projects to municipalities, public organizations, SAUs that really fall under sort of general operations and are usually the responsibility of the public to fund. So if you were going to bring a project through our Community Grants Program, it really needs to be a special effort that is not, so for in the example of an SAU, not part of general school operations. So the Community Grants Program would not be appropriate, say, for you to apply for funding because you need the development of a new math curriculum, for example, or computers for the computer lab. However, if you are doing a community-based project or a project that is sort of outside the scope of usual school operations, maybe afternoon enrichment or that kind of program, that would be eligible for funding. And here's a list of what is not eligible for funding through our community grants program. These have not changed. These are the same as we have had in the past. I'll just call your attention to a couple things on this list. Religious programs are not eligible for funding. However, faith-based organizations that are providing programs that serve the broader community are welcome to apply through our community grants program. You will see 3 bullets from the bottom: replacement of public funding. Most certainly, many of you have experienced reductions in the public funding that you are receiving from either the federal government, state government, or your municipalities. Unfortunately, this foundation is in no way able to fill the gaps that have been left by those decreases in public funding, and so we are not able to provide a grant that just simply replaces that funding. However, what is eligible is what we might call a bridge funding. So a project or a proposal that proposes that we fund your work while you transition to a new funding model. That is something that would be eligible for funding. And I'll also call your attention to substance use disorder services. If you're providing either treatment or prevention services, those are not eligible for funding through our community grants program. That is a separate program here, and those applications are by invitation only. So I'd like to talk a little bit about our grant priorities. And for the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, our grant priorities are aligned with and tied to our 6 vision areas. These 6 vision areas are from our strategic plan, and they are the components of fulfilling our mission, which is to contribute to the creation of a strong, just, and resilient community here in New Hampshire. So we will seek to fund organizations whose work advances one or more of these vision areas. And when you complete your application, you will see that we'll ask how your work does that and which vision area it is aligned with, and is there any even maybe possibly integration across the vision areas. In 2 of our vision areas, I want to call your attention to some areas of particular interest that we have. We welcome applications broadly in the area of education, but we do have a particular interest in proposals that advance best practices in early childhood development. So that might be, for example, training of child care professionals and other approaches that are known to be best practices in early childhood development. And if you visit our website, you will find a link there with some research that has been done here in New Hampshire by the Carsey Institute that outlines what some of those best practices are. And so we encourage you to take a look at that if you work in early childhood development, so that you can determine whether or not there's an alignment between your work and this particular interest. And I'll also call your attention to the area of civic engagement. And so we really have a particular interest in proposals that will advance problem solving at the local, regional, or statewide level, or that foster effective civic dialogue and respect for differing views. So in addition to those priorities that are linked to our vision areas, across all of those vision areas, we are particularly interested in proposals that promote innovation or support advocacy. And specifically in the area of innovation, we would be very interested in proposals that demonstrate your desire to do business in a new way, or reduce costs, or create efficiencies or increase your impact in innovative ways. And in the area of advocacy, we are especially interested in proposals that advance the interests of low-income and disadvantaged populations, or applications where the applicants are proposing collaborative work to do the same, or to develop resources that benefit the wider advocacy field. So we have two types of grants in our community grants program. We have small grants and large grants, and we're going to go through each. Here on this slide, you will see a summary of our small grants program. Our small grants are grants that are up to $5,000, and you are welcome to submit applications for small grants through our online portal anytime between March 1st and 15th. And those are accepted on a rolling deadline. There's no one specific deadline. Anytime between March 1st and November 15th, you are welcome to submit a small grant proposal. And we will make a decision and provide you with that decision within just 5 to 4 weeks. It will be 4 to 6 weeks for that decision. And small grants are really, again, small amounts of money for a focused set of activities that either focus on delivering your programs and services, and those programs and services that meet an urgent community need, or a set of activities that build your organizational capacity. And I'd like to just say a little bit more about the capacity building. As we mentioned, Ellen Koenig is with us today, and she's going to be walking us through a demonstration of the NonprofitNext platform as part of this webinar. And indeed, many of you may already know about NonprofitNext or use this excellent tool. And on NonprofitNext, as you're going to see in just a few minutes, you really will find a treasure trove of resources and tools on a whole range of nonprofit capacity building topics. And access to NonprofitNext is a benefit of membership in the New Hampshire Center for Nonprofits, and we encourage our nonprofit partners to both become members of the center and to use this excellent tool. And if you are submitting an organizational capacity building grant application, we really hope that you'll be accessing this tool as part of that work that you're doing. And you will see on our application a question that will ask you how you are using the tools available on NonprofitNext in your organizational capacity building. Our large grants program are for grants that are larger than $5,000, and you see at the bottom of this slide the award limits, up to $20,000 for requests that come from our region, from the various regions, or $25,000 if your organization works in a multi-regional way or is a statewide organization. And this process for applying for a large grant is the same process that we used last year. We received an awful lot of really positive feedback from our nonprofit partners about this process. And the first step for applying for a large grant is the submission of a concept paper. A concept paper is kind of like a mini application. It's really very brief. It's a couple of pages. And you have the opportunity to submit a concept paper for a large grant between August 1st and August 21st. Those concept papers will be reviewed. And if your concept paper is accepted, you'll be notified of that acceptance by September 11th. And it's at that point that we will invite you to submit a full application. If your concept paper is not accepted, you will also be notified by September 11th. And we are available to talk to you about why your concept paper was not accepted. Katie, is there something you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to note that the use of concept papers in our large grants and the community grants program was new last year. We had pretty positive reaction from many of you. The goal of this is twofold. We're trying to reduce your cost in accessing funds from the foundation. So by doing a short concept paper and getting that initial review, you'll have a better sense of whether, your chances in terms of whether it's worth the larger investment of doing full grant application. So one of them is streamlining your work as well as reducing your costs. And then the time frames Anne described to you here is intended to keep to a quick turnaround time. A few years ago, some of you know, we cut the turnaround time on this program by 25% on large grants. We cut it in half on small grants, and that was in response to feedback from all of you that you needed access to the money quicker, especially during the recession. So we're trying to keep the timeline tight. That's why you see the turnaround and phasing that you do on the timeline, but yet provide the concept paper so you're getting a little bit better investment of your time. So thanks for your input on that. I just wanted you to know how we modify the program in response to feedback from all of you. Thanks, Ann.
No, excellent. Thank you, Katie. Excellent. So if your concept paper is accepted, you will have the opportunity between September 12th and September 30th to go back into the online portal and complete full application, and we will notify you of our grant decisions by the end of December. And if any of you have questions as to whether you should apply to a region or the multi-regional or statewide program, please contact staff. And again, we'll be providing you with the contact information for staff during this webinar. So in our large grant program, there are three types of funding. We provide unrestricted operating support, we provide project support, and we provide multi-year grants. Let's delve a little bit further into each of these. So the Foundation has been offering operating support for a number of years now, and we realize that we're one of the few sources for this type of funding here in New Hampshire. And we have stated in the past, and we wish to continue to increase our support of strong, highly effective nonprofits through unrestricted operating support. Because this is unrestricted funding and it's a really highly trusting kind of grant, it's an investment in your organization and its development, we have a few guidelines and requirements for the kinds of organizations that we're looking for to apply for operating support. And you see listed here on this slide what those requirements are. And I just want to highlight a couple of things here. First of all, you must have a board-approved strategic plan in order to apply for an operating grant. And you know, the strategic plan, there are plenty of resources online for what a strategic plan, the components of a strategic plan. It will include, you know, your goals and objectives for the year, a time frame, specific outcomes for your organizational development, and it usually has a programmatic component, an operational component, and your financial goals for the period covered. In addition, you'll see that we will require that you'll completed some sort of organizational self-assessment. On both the concept paper and in the application, we will ask you about your organization's approach to self-assessment. How are you assessing your own organizational development? How are you working to become a better, stronger organization? Who is involved in the assessment process? Given what you've learned in the assessment, what are your priorities for organizational development? And there are some tools available to you for this. The corporate fund on its website has a board self-assessment tool, and indeed the New Hampshire Center for Nonprofits also has the CCAT, the Core Capacity Assessment Tool, that is another very important tool in assessing your organization's strengths and places where you can strengthen your work. And we encourage you to check those, to look at those tools. Katie.
And just like similar to my other comment here, our move toward more unrestricted operating support is a direct result of surveys and convenings we had with the nonprofit community around 3 years ago, when there was a strong press for more types of flexible funding, multi-year funding, which Ann will speak to later, and also a response to the recession, where we figure we need to give you all more flexibility with the funds in times of great change to manage the grants. So with the standards Ann said, we have actually increased operating grants within this program by 40% in the past 3 years. And that's, again, following feedback from you all. We hope these are useful and are proud and happy to be able to continue supporting this work in this way. It's a deeper level of partnership because the funds are more unrestricted, as Ann said.
Great. Thank you, Katie. For our large grants program, we also do provide project support. And as with small grants, the project support is really just a support for a focused set of activities during a stated period of time with very clearly stated deliverables. Now, we do want to provide more operating support, as we have just mentioned. But as you saw, there are certain requirements to submitting an operating grant request, and not all organizations are in a position to submit such an application, or it just might not be what you really need right now. And so project support is something that we are willing to consider. The most competitive project support applications will be those that really demonstrate persuasively why now is a strategic time for the foundation to invest in supporting the project. and also that there are very clear and specific outcomes that you will achieve through the project. And finally, if it's ongoing work, that you have a plan for sustaining the work beyond the grant period. And project support grants, as large grants, can, just like small grants, can either support your organizational capacity building, or they can support your program and the work that you're doing to meet your mission. We wanted to speak just briefly about multi-year grants. Whether you're applying for an operating or for project support, we will continue to consider multi-year grants. We do recognize the value of multi-year grants for you as an organization and the stability that it provides nonprofits to have a multi-year commitment of funding. That said, our multi-year grants are limited, and that is due to the IRS requirements that we have to follow regarding encumbering the funding when we make such a commitment. And so if you are interested in submitting a multi-year grant, we would like you to reach out to a member of staff and discuss that before you submit the application, so that we can have a discussion about your plans around that. Multi-year grants are available for 2 or 3 years. And in the process of making an application for a multi-year grant, you will be asked for a work plan and a budget that covers all of the requested grant years. So we often get the question, how do I access foundation donors? How can I have access to those donors that you work with at the foundation? And this webinar is really providing you with the answer to that question. The first way is to submit an application through our community grants program, what we've just discussed. We regularly share these applications with our donors who have an interest in either the regions in which you work or the type of work that you're doing. And even if you're not ready to submit an application, we really encourage you to complete a profile in our online grant system. This is a new tool that we are using, and we are not just using it to accept your grant applications. We are also using it to serve as a way to collect information about work that you're doing, and we will be using it to inform our donors about your work. And this system is actively under development. We will be building it out, particularly over the coming year, and we'll be using that information with our donors to make sure that they are aware of the work that you're doing. As we are building that out and there are more and more components of the profile for you to complete, we'll let you know that those are available. But actually, this is a really good segue to the next part of our webinar, and my colleague Andrea Cotter, who's going to show you a little bit more about the online profile and our online system.
Okay. Good morning. First, I just want to do a quick poll to get a gauge of people's experience levels with our online grants portal. So have you set up a profile in our online grants portal?
What is it?
So we have yes, no, and what is an online grant portal? So it looks like most of you have voted, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. So it's pretty split. About half of you have filled out a profile, the other half is not, and we have a few who would like to know what an online grants portal is. So what I'm going to do right now is go ahead and show you.
And Andrea, I just want to emphasize the importance of being present on the profile, as Ann mentioned. If we get a question from a donor of who's doing work in this area, in this region of the state, often we know that, or someone in the building knows that, and we share that information informally. Very often we go to the profiles and look for what we have in our online profile. And more we're going to be utilizing that tool and sharing that information with donors. So I can't overstate the importance for you to have a presence on our radar and for us to be able to share your good work. This is one tool that we encourage you to use. And as Ann said, we'll be further developing it, so there'll be a little more meat on it as we go forward. but for now, even the basics are useful to us and ultimately useful to you. So Andrea, go ahead. Just wanted to emphasize that. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to navigate out to our website, www.nhcs.org. And from our site, the way that you'd go to navigate to our online grants portal is you'd click on this login link in the top right. You'll see 3 different buttons there. The one that you want to click on if you want to set up a profile or apply is the Apply for a Grant link. Okay, and once you get to the landing page, you'll see 2 different options. So if you're a returning applicant, which either means that we set up a profile for you, we set up profiles for all organizations who've applied to us since 2006, and we sent those username and passwords out to the primary contact of the organization. So you click there, or for anyone who's come in and set up their own account, you click on this returning applicants link. If you've never logged in and there is no profile set up for your organization, you're going to click on this Create New Login. And it's important to note that how we've set up our online grants portal is that every organization has one unique login. So if you're an organization that has several different offices throughout the state, you're still going to have one login for everyone at your organization. So it's important that we don't have you trying to create a new login if your organization already has one created, because it will actually prevent you from creating one. So I'm going to go ahead and log in now as a returning applicant. And I've set up a special login just for today to show you what it's going to look like if you're brand new, you haven't really filled out your profile yet. So what can happen is you'll get to this welcome page, and you'll see your organization profile is not complete. Please click on your organization name to continue adding the required information. So what you'll do here, if you want to edit your profile, is you'll click on this blue link here. And it's going to show me all the items that I need to fill out. So as I fill these things out, the missing items is going to, the list is going to get shorter. So what I have to do here is click on Edit Organization Details, and it's going to bring me to a screen where I can actually enter all of those fields. So I'm just going to put in some information to get us going. And you can save at any time. So you'll see these are all the items that are still missing here. I can save, but because I haven't completed my profile, it's still going to show me that the profile is not complete. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to log out and log into one that is complete so you can see what that looks like once you're done with your profile. So you can see now that I've completed my profile, I've filled out all of those fields. I no longer have that red link here, and I can also see other items. So once I'm done with my profile, this nonprofit checklist section is also going to pop up on my home page. I can click on Edit there. I have to read all of this and check through all of these items. Sign at the bottom. I'll click on Ready to Submit if I've completed everything. Submit. And once that nonprofit checklist is complete, I'll also see this, this section below that's for applications and concept papers. And that's the point where I can actually start to apply. Currently, we have no applications available in the system. So you see this No Applications Currently Available link. when our rolling deadline for community grants opens up on Friday, this will change to start a new application link, and that's where you'll click to begin your community grants application. So some technical things that I think are important to note are we recommend that you use the most updated version of browsers possible. Google Chrome is our favorite for accessing the online grants portal, but you can also use Safari and Internet Explorer. If you use Internet Explorer, we recommend that you use version 8 or newer. And just to note, Google Chrome is a free browser, so you can go and download that. And I'm just going to turn it back over to Ann and open it up and see if anyone has any questions about it.
Sure. So great. Thank you, Andrea. So we're going to go back to the slides. Excellent. So we've gone over 2/3 of what we wanted to in today's webinar. We've reviewed the guidelines and priorities for the 2013 Community Grants Program and how to access our online grant application portal, which is where the organization profiles live that we've talked about and that Katie mentioned are so important to our having as broad a picture as we can of the work that's going on in the nonprofit sector. So if you have questions, there are a number of ways for you to get them answered. We do have a few minutes to answer questions today, if you've launched any, and we'll begin to try to look through those in just a second. But our website is a really good go-to place for information about the program. The criteria are there. Our guidelines are there. I should mention to you, I forgot to mention this earlier, that while our online portal is only open to receive applications on those dates I gave you earlier, templates of the small grants application and the large grants concept papers are available on the website. So you can just go there and see what the questions are, and you can begin thinking about them and working on them, and then have yourself ready, set to go when those grants programs open up for you to formally apply. We also have a whole list of FAQs on the website, and that's a great place to just kind of like peruse through and look at questions others have asked and what the answers are. And that's all on our website, nhcf.org. We also encourage you to sign up for our e-news. That's at info@nhcf.org. That is a way in which we communicate broadly with the public in general. And also you can contact a member of our staff. And we have 2 folks here on this slide that we would like to refer you to. If you have questions around the application guidelines or priorities or our deadlines, we'd like to invite you to contact my colleague Wendy Cahill, and you see her email address there. And if you have specific questions about the online portal, the things that Andrea just reviewed with you, technical questions, I forgot my password, does my organization already have a profile set up, I'm not able to see X, Y, or Z, please contact my colleague Loretta Gomes, and you can see her email address there, lag@nhcf.org. So Andrea, can you look at the questions that have been asked, and we can see if there's any questions there that we're able to answer at this point. We do have a question, does substance use include tobacco use prevention and cessation? The answer to that is yes. That is included in substance use treatment and prevention. So great. Will these slides be available for download? Well, thank you very much for asking that question. I neglected to say that this webinar is being recorded, and a link to it will be available on our website. So if you need to refer to it, or if you want to share it with colleagues who are away on school vacation this week, you can do that. The next question is, can a group apply for a small grant and a large grant in the same year? That's a great question. Thank you for asking that, Rick. An organization is eligible to receive 1 grant a year from the charitable foundation through the competitive grants program that we've talked about, the community grants program that we've discussed today. And yes, that means that you can apply for either and receive either a large grant or a small grant in the course of 1 year. Now, if you apply for a small grant and you receive it, that's your grant for this year. If you apply for a small grant and you are declined, you could either reapply for a small grant or you could decide that you want to apply later for a large grant. But indeed, only one application, one grant will be funded a year per organization through the Community Grants Program. Now, we do have a few other grants programs here at the Foundation that some of you may be familiar with. We have the Tillotson program that funds work in the North Country. We have some programs that fund environmental work in the Upper Valley, the Wellborn Fund and the Mitigation and Enhancement Fund. If you have a grant through one of our other grant programs, you are still eligible to apply for a grant through the Community Grants Program. So, and if you have any questions on that, again, please contact Wendy and she'll be happy to work that. How do we demonstrate strong board and staff engagement and leadership? That's a great question. Let's see. How do we demonstrate it? I think that you will have the opportunity on the application to describe, for example, you might want to share with us specific examples of how the board has been involved in either making decisions or moving the strategies that are in your strategic plan over the course of a year. The plan is really the plan for the entire organization, not just staff or just board, but for both. And you can demonstrate that by just describing what those goals and priorities have been and how board and staff have worked together to advance those goals. Does anybody else have anything to add to that, Katie? No? Yeah. Good.
I mean, the only question, you know, some nonprofits in their applications will measure board in fundraising or board engagement in the work, of course, describing the work that they're strengths that you want to highlight. Also, the self-assessment required to have done a self-assessment. Some nonprofits will mention some of the things they learned from that, and then sometimes it's around board engagement.
Excellent. Okay, what is board giving? By board giving, what we mean is a financial contribution by every member of your board in a particular year. We are not interested in knowing what that amount is or what each individual amount is. Board members, we recognize board members all have varying levels of capacity to give to the organization in which they are already supporting through their volunteer efforts. But we do expect that every board member makes some level of financial contribution to the organization over the course of the year. And again, I want to stress that we do not need to know what that amount is, and that board members are, of course, expected to only make those contributions in line with their own ability to give and their own capacity to give. But it really does demonstrate a very strong support of your board and of your board's support of your organization that 100% of them have made such a contribution to your organization. Andrea, I'm noticing that there's a number of profile questions. Do you want to begin to address those?
Sure. Okay, so the first one is, how do you update your org profile with a new contact person and or info? So let me just navigate back to our profile. So right now I'm on my home page, so I've just logged in. So what I'm going to do is just click on my organization name, the blue hyperlink. This is going to take me to a page where I can view the information, but I can't edit it from here. So I can quickly scroll through and see what I've filled out. So the first question was, how do you just update the info? So if I want to update my address, mission statement, any of those items, I'm going to click on Edit Organization Details. That's going to take me to a page where I have all these fields that are now editable. So I can go in and update any of these items. If I want to update these documents, I have a new financial statement. I'm just going to choose the file here, navigate out to it, and it will actually override the old file. So I can do that for you now. And then I'm going to click on Save. And when I save it, that file will just override. And the second part of that question was, how do I edit my contacts? So if you go down to the bottom of your profile view page, you'll see that you have both an executive director and a set of contacts. So I'm able to edit any of these by just clicking on the edit button here. And then I can go in and update any of these fields and then save. I can also add a new contact by clicking on this Add New Contact button. So now I'm going to go back and just see what other questions we have about the profile.
While Andrea's getting the questions, I'll just note that Andrea just noted one part of the profile that referred to audited financial statements. Just so folks know, we do not share audited financials with donors. We share general information. Some stuff we may share word for word, your description of mission or your board list or whatever, but that is one thing that we consider more of a confidential information you share with the foundation. That's just an FYI if there are any concerns about that. Those are not passed on to donors or anyone else.
Okay, and just another item about audited financial statements. It is a required item on your profile. If you don't have an audited financial statement, please just upload whatever financial statement you do have. So we have time for one more question, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ellen Koenig. So if you're an organization who's under the umbrella of a larger fiscal agent, can you still fill out your own profile? So this person's example is their program is an after-school program, and the fiscal agent is the school district. If you're operating under that organization's EIN, you really should, if you're really part of that organization, you really should apply using that organization profile. If you really are your own separate organization and not just a program of an organization, and you don't have an EIN number or tax-exempt status, what you do is you'd contact us, and we'd assign you a dummy EIN, we call it, just to allow you to be able to set up a profile. So if you have questions about that, please don't hesitate to give us a call.
So thank you very much. At this point, we are going to turn the webinar over to our dear colleague Ellen Koenig from the New Hampshire Center for Nonprofits, who is going to do a demonstration of the NonprofitNext resource platform.
Great. Thank you, everyone, and hello, good morning out there on this gloomy day. So I'm at the end of the show here, and so I get to make sure you're awake for the rest of the webinar. But I also get to show you a resource that we have developed at the Nonprofit Center, NonprofitNext. So, there we did it. NonprofitNext, just as a very short history, began as a partnership with 3 organizations. CCA Global, which is a $15 billion company housed in our very own Manchester, New Hampshire, which has created online cooperatives for a number of industries. The New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, who's been talking with Howard Brodsky of CCA Global about this idea for a number of years, and then brought it to the New Hampshire Center for Nonprofits and helped to fundraise the money to make possible the building of an online portal that gives you the resources to do what needs to be done. Let me say just a little bit about it before I give you a tour. The website was launched in June of 2011. We spent about 7 or 8 months trying to figure out what tools and resources would be most useful for nonprofit practitioners. And the thing that makes NonprofitNext different from most other websites that you may use is while we do have some white papers on there, we do have some how-tos on there, what we have are the resources that you can use right away in order to do what you are trying to do. So for example, rather than reading all about why you should have a conflict of interest statement in your, or policy in your organization, those things are great. But it could be that you need to have one to bring to your board in the next 10 minutes because your board meeting is coming up. You can click a link on NonprofitNext and find a sample one that is complete. In fact, it's not just complete, it's probably one that Terry Knowles from the Attorney General's office has looked at and said, yes, that hits all the requirements for the state of New Hampshire. So you know that you can use this as is, or you can modify it to make it unique and extremely usable for your organization. And that's really the key differentiator for NonprofitNext. There's lots of great background information there that you can use to move your organization along. Oh dear. Well, that doesn't feel very good. But the thing about it is that there are resources that you can use right away. We call it the Ready, Set, Go model. So you are able to get ready, get set, and then these tools allow you to go and do what needs to be done. We have about 1,300 users using it right now, representing about 600 organizations. And I really want to stress that every board member and every staff member of organizations which are members of the Nonprofit Center can use NonprofitNext for free. It's part of your membership dues. And so we encourage you to get as many of your board members, as many as your staff members on NonprofitNext, because there's a lot of information to look at and look around with. So before we actually go to the site, I'm going to get my own chance to do a couple of polls. So Andrea, if you could just bring up the first question, which is, have you ever used NonprofitNext? So let me know how many of you have actually used this. And I will say that we've recently completed an evaluation of NonprofitNext and got some great feedback on what people like and how to improve what people are looking for. So we're starting to see that people are weighing in. And I'm delighted to be here because what we're seeing is so far more people have not yet used NonprofitNext on this webinar than have. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So for the next question, Andrea, if we could close that. And let me ask you a quick question about what sections you think would be most useful to you. There are actually 10 sections on the site, but there are 5 here that we listed. So if you could just take a moment to vote for what sections you would most like to see, and then I can tell you how that correlates with what we see for the analytics of what gets used most on the site. As you're voting, I will tell you that there are things like cost savings on there, which are a wonderful resource. There is an Outlook training that you can take on at your desk that walks you through some of the Microsoft Office Suite programs. There's a great board quiz there that your board members can take as a very fun and kind of lighthearted way to reinforce board responsibilities. But I'm not going to show you those because I don't have time today. But so that's just the tease for what you can go in and look at. But what we're seeing now, with most people having voted, is that fundraising and board issues are the things you want to see most, and that correlates completely with the sites and sections that get visited most frequently on NonprofitNext. So I'm going to take you there. Thank you, Andrea. Give that a little click. I'm going to take you there through the magic of technology. And what you see is, yeah, if you could enlarge that, it's great. So this is what you see when you don't yet have a login. So if you do have one, you can get logged in there. And if you don't have a login, you can request one right down here. But by magic, I happen to have a login. So I'm going to type that here. And let's see if I can remember my password. So this is what you see when you do log in. And you can see that this home page we like to feel is clear and easy to navigate. We have the slight listing of some of the things you can find here. We have the things that are new. So if you haven't visited NonprofitNext lately, here are some of the things you can look at. And we also have articles from Nonprofit Quarterly here on our RSS feed. So if you're looking for what some of the national chatter is, you can get that right here. We have these categories that you can choose from. And I'm going to take you on a very quick tour of both the board and the fundraising section so you can get a sense for how this works. So if you click onto the board section, you can see a listing of all the pages that are here for you to open. Let us look at board self-assessment because that is something that was already mentioned earlier in the webinar. And it's a great example of the way that we've structured the site. So here we have about a 2.5-page discussion on the things you should think about for a board self-assessment and the process that you might use and things like that. And then down here you have 4 different choices of board self-assessments, all of them Word documents. You can click on the board satisfaction survey or a brief board self-assessment, which I'm going to do very quickly here. And you can see that this is a sort of a homegrown one. You can change these questions if you want. It's a very non-intimidating one. It can be a great conversation starter. It can be the thing that you decide to use. Whoops. Where do I go? To Explorer? Okay, there we go. Okay, thank you. We also have here the link to the Corporate Fund Board Self-Assessment, which Ann mentioned earlier. So you can click on here and learn about how your board can be involved in the online survey that the Corporate Fund offers for free to New Hampshire-based organizations. So if you multiply these amount of resources times every link that is here, you start to see that there's a lot of really useful data here. Just going to quickly take you to fundraising because that's the other section that was mentioned an awful lot here. We have lots of great resources here on a lot of different things. I'm going to show you one quick thing that a lot of people really like. Under capital campaigns, if you are using a gift chart, for example, there's a lot of discussion here as a quiz on if you're ready to take a go for a capital campaign. But right over here, if you want to create a gift chart, which can be a very useful tool in talking with donors, not just about a capital campaign, but about any type of fundraising experience that you want, this will allow you to do it. So I've plugged in $100,000 here. And this gift chart will automatically calculate how many gifts you need in a certain range, as well as how many prospects. How many people do I need to ask in order to get that one $10,000 gift? Well, I should think about asking 4 people. You can then export it to an Excel spreadsheet and then pretty it up and make it your own. So yet another way to show, to Explorer, right? Okay, back to Explorer. Another way to show your donors what it is you're trying to do and an easy way to have the conversation. So as we look at things, the other section I wanted to show you is the fact that we have short videos in every section. What we find with the trainings is that we have the ability to answer a single question with these videos. And I think this one where we start off is a great example of the chance to find videos that you don't normally see. This happens to be a well-known donor in New Hampshire talking about how he feels being approached by nonprofits and asked for a gift. So if you're trying to get your donors to get over the fear of asking, here are some 3-minute videos that you can bring into the boardroom to help your board understand some good content on fundraising, and then maybe have a conversation afterwards. We have some organizations who say to us, we use one video at every board and then we have a conversation on it. So that's about all the time I have. I do just want to very quickly commend to you the Andy Goodman presentation, which will only be on NonprofitNext until April 15th. Andy is a national trainer. You would pay $250 to access this webinar. It's terrific. For my money, it's the best webinar I've ever seen, on just this one excluded, of course, on making good presentations. So it's well worth your money to get on there, take a look at it before April 15th, because it's a wonderful resource for anybody who's doing any kind of public presentation. So with that, I give it back to you, Ann.
Okay, excellent. Well, we'd like to just thank all of you for taking the time to join us today. Again, we're delighted to have all of you with us, and I just want to, reiterate that we are available for your questions. The website is your friend, so go there, and not only will you find access to all of the information we've discussed today, but information about how to find Wendy and Loretta, who are real people who can answer your questions. So thank you so much. And we wish you all a happy Wednesday, and stay safe in the storm. Bye-bye.